There are reactions, and then there are the ones that happen before a person has time to manage their own face. This was the second kind. Mark Kotsay did not know, in the immediate aftermath of Shohei Ohtani's 18th home run of the season, that a camera positioned in the home dugout had captured his expression in the exact moment the ball left the yard. He did not know that expression would be replayed, slowed down, analyzed frame by frame, and discussed across American sports media for the next several days. What that camera caught was not the practiced composure of a major league manager. It was something rawer. Something closer to bewilderment than anything resembling professional reaction. His mouth opened slightly. His eyebrows rose in a way that looked almost involuntary, the kind of movement a face makes when the brain behind it has briefly stopped processing information the normal way. For a manager who has spent decades inside this sport, who has seen home runs in every conceivable situation, who has built a professional reputation partly on his ability to remain even-keeled in moments of extreme highs and extreme lows, that unguarded reaction told a story all on its own. Something about this particular home run had broken through even Kotsay's composure. And by the time he sat down for his post-game availability, he was not interested in pretending otherwise. The home run itself had arrived in a way that made the moment feel inevitable in hindsight, even though nobody in that stadium had actually been able to predict it. The count had been full. 3 balls, 2 strikes. The kind of count where every person watching understands that the next pitch will resolve the at-bat one way or another. There is no more room for foul balls that simply extend the moment. Whatever happens next happens completely. The pitch came in. A breaking ball that started in the zone and dove out of it late, the kind of pitch that is specifically designed to be untouchable in exactly that count, against exactly that situation, when a hitter's instinct is to protect the strike zone rather than commit fully to a swing that might miss entirely. Ohtani committed fully. The contact, when it came, produced a sound that several people in the stadium would later describe using almost identical language without having spoken to each other first. Not the crack of a typical home run. Something heavier. Something that seemed to carry more weight than the physics of a baseball and a bat should reasonably produce. The ball left the bat and never seemed to come down. It cleared the back wall of the bullpen in right field, a section of the ballpark that home runs reach only a handful of times across an entire season. The exit velocity, when it appeared on the scoreboard moments later, drew an audible reaction from the crowd that had nothing to do with the home run itself and everything to do with simply seeing the number displayed. The stadium needed a moment to fully register what it had just watched. So did Kotsay. The dugout camera angle that captured his reaction has become, in the days since, one of the most replayed pieces of footage from this entire season. Not because of anything dramatic in the traditional sense. No fist pumps. No shouting. No outward display of the kind of excitement that managers sometimes allow themselves in big moments. It was the opposite of performance. It was a man whose face simply could not keep up with what his eyes had just shown him. Analysts who broke down the footage frame by frame in the hours following the game pointed to several specific details. The way his hands, which had been resting on the dugout rail, gripped slightly tighter in the instant of contact. Watching a home run. That's a person watching something that doesn't make sense to him yet. That description stuck. It was repeated across multiple outlets in the hours that followed, becoming something close to the defining caption for the moment. When Kotsay arrived at his post-game podium, the question was waiting for him before he had even finished sitting down. A reporter, holding up a phone with the dugout footage already queued up, asked him directly. Had he seen the clip of his own reaction? Did he know what his face had looked like in that moment? Kotsay actually laughed. A real laugh, not the practiced kind that managers sometimes use to deflect uncomfortable questions. I haven't seen it, but I can imagine. I'm not going to pretend I had some composed, measured reaction to that. I didn't. I don't think anybody in that dugout did. The reporter pressed further. What exactly had gone through his mind in that moment? Kotsay took a moment before answering. When he did, his voice carried a kind of honesty that managers, conditioned by years of careful media training, rarely allow themselves in real time. Genuinely, my first thought was, did that really just happen? Not in a skeptical way. In a way where the information takes a second to actually land. I've been around this game a long time. I've seen a lot of home runs. That's not a normal one. That's not a normal anything. The numbers, once fully confirmed, explained at least part of why Kotsay's reaction had been so unguarded. The exit velocity placed the home run among the hardest hit balls of the entire season across all of baseball, not just within this roster or this division. The distance pushed it into a category that statisticians use sparingly, reserved for the small handful of home runs each year that exceed what even experienced evaluators consider typical upper-range power. But Kotsay, when pressed on the specific numbers, suggested that the statistics alone did not fully capture what had made the moment land the way it did for him. You can show me the exit velocity. You can show me the distance. Those numbers are real and they're remarkable. But what got me in the moment wasn't the math. It was just the sound. And the way the ball never seemed to slow down. There's hard hit, and then there's whatever that was. A reporter asked whether, having now managed Ohtani for an extended stretch, he had become at all desensitized to moments like this. Whether the remarkable had started to feel routine. Kotsay shook his head immediately, without hesitation. No. And I hope I never do. I think the day a manager stops being amazed by what Shohei does is the day that manager has stopped paying attention. I never want to get used to this. I want my face to keep doing exactly what it did tonight, every single time. The reaction from American sports media in the hours following the game extended well beyond the dugout footage itself. Analysts who cover the sport at the highest level, the kind of voices who have built careers on a studied resistance to hyperbole, found themselves reaching for language that pushed past their usual restraint. Several described the home run as among the most impressive single swings of the entire season. One prominent broadcaster, during a national highlight segment, paused after showing the replay and simply said, "I don't know what else there is to say about him at this point. We're running out of new ways to describe this." That sentiment echoed across multiple platforms throughout the following day. The specific challenge that Ohtani continues to present to the people whose job it is to describe baseball for a living, the difficulty of finding fresh language for a player who keeps producing moments that exceed the vocabulary typically reserved for excellence in this sport. Kotsay, when told about the broader media reaction the following day, offered a brief response that captured something close to the central truth of the entire situation. "I don't think any of us are going to figure out the right words for this. I think we just have to keep watching and let our faces say what they're going to say. Mine clearly had something to say last night." Ohtani himself, when asked about his manager's viral reaction, offered the kind of restrained, slightly amused response that has become characteristic of how he engages with moments of this nature. He smiled, briefly, when the question was relayed to him. "I didn't see his face. I was running the bases. But I believe it. I think we were all a little surprised by that one." Asked whether he had felt, in the moment of contact, that the ball was going to travel as far as it ultimately did, Ohtani considered the question carefully before answering. "You feel it differently when the contact is exactly right. I knew it was good. I didn't know it would go quite that far. That part surprised me too." That admission, small as it was, carried its own significance. Even Ohtani, the person at the actual center of the moment, had been caught slightly off guard by the full scale of what his own swing had produced. If the man who hit the ball had been surprised, it made a little more sense that his manager's face had momentarily forgotten how to remain composed. By the following afternoon, the dugout footage had been viewed millions of times across various platforms. Compilations had been assembled comparing Kotsay's expression to a range of reaction memes, the kind of internet treatment reserved for moments that capture something universally recognizable about genuine, unguarded human response. Kotsay, when asked if he had finally watched the clip himself, admitted that he had. "Yeah, I watched it. I won't lie, it's a little embarrassing. But you know what, I'm not going to apologize for it either. That's what watching greatness up close actually looks like. It's not always composed. Sometimes it just looks like a grown man forgetting how his own face works for about 2 seconds. He paused, then added one final thought, the kind of comment that managers occasionally allow themselves when the formal structure of a press conference has loosened slightly into something more genuine. I've got the best seat in the world for this. Every single night. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't get to me sometimes. Tonight it clearly did.